The British forces continued struggling with the soldiers of the Kawana clan around Lake Biwa, with Dorian escaping from a dangerous ambush, albeit without most of his men. Attempts to stabilise the situation saw some success, while the real action was taking place over to the east. Jos Arton destroyed a large Odawara force and restored the surviving leaders of the French expedition to power over their captured territory. The hope was that this act of kindness would grant useful leverage to the British government, who were increasingly sceptical about whether the war was a wise venture. This required the liberated French to play along, though. From what I've heard, they were planning on executing you tomorrow. Looks like you're gonna have to owe me one, right?
Oh yes, I certainly owe you something.
I think what'll probably happen is my HQ will ask you to vouch for our achievements here, something like that. Should be easy enough. In return, Britain will guarantee your safety until the Japs finally throw it in.
So our debt is to Britain, you say? And yet you are not British, monsieur. Your accent. You are from the desert prison.
If you're in the Empire, you're British. That's how it works over on our side, mate. Besides, I'm from Essex. Just grew up on the reverse side of the map.
How touching. I suppose you will soon be saying that I am British too. But the mere thought offends me to the core. Now I wish not to be spared the Japanese blade, for the British sneer is a torture beyond any imaginable. By the mercy of Mary, I plead for a quicker and cleaner demise than as the lapdog of a back-toothed provincial of the most despicable and underhanded empire this world has ever endured.
So, not a fan of us, eh?
No, no, monsieur. You place your trust in me without due caution, for there is little I would not do to defy the hated British, no matter the debts or costs involved. Yes, in sparing me, perhaps your own doom has been rightfully sealed. Your empire's greed and deceit shall be its undoing.
Right. Reliable bloke you are. This'll go fine. Hello there and welcome back to Honourable Gentlemen. Right now we're starting off with a check-in on Jervis and his mission to conquer Shikoku, and long story short, it's going pretty well. We've gathered up 3 stacks to move counterclockwise around the top of the island, and they've just taken a castle there. And we've also got 2 stacks who are moving clockwise around the bottom, so soon we'll have all of the island conquered. The Yamauchi who control it still also control Awaji Island, but we're not going to worry too much about that. We've got ongoing troubles with samurai rebellions on our front line. They're not happening naturally, it's this one enemy agent who keeps managing to start them somehow, and I don't really have an agent capable of taking him down, so we're just tolerating it and trying to defeat them every time they pop up. Far away, we need to advance slightly on our project to get to Musashi province and capture the castle or castles of Edo, since this mod splits it out into 3. I'm not sure if I need to take all 3 to actually achieve the victory condition. I suppose we'll have to find out. So there, we just easily took another castle from the Odawara, so we've got ourselves a more substantial base. We need to go to the west, but there is also the threat that will be attacked from the north. There's a river crossing there that we can potentially defend to prevent that from happening. For now, we'll just set up and come back to that situation in the next turn. Here we are in spring. There's another frontline issue to deal with. The Wakayama have walked past all of my armies somehow and are getting into our territory. And I make things worse here. I attacked both of them and they both just moved further into our territory, since retreating gives you extra movement points for all intents and purposes. Fortunately, I could go after at least one of them in order to stop it, but that does also mean that one army, the one on the left, will be able to potentially go and just take a castle, and we can't stop them. So this is annoying. At least this army goes down. We've got 3 stacks against their 1. A bit of action there for one of my minor generals who I've promoted up to help John defend this area of the map. Now back to Jos and George. There was an army that did come over that river crossing to our north. I could quite easily defeat it in this battle, even with an auto-resolve, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to lose the men to an auto-resolve, and I didn't want to go through the rigmarole of actually fighting it manually. In this case, we can just do that and force them back across the river crossing now that the battle is completely unwinnable for them. And with that set up, we can put George's army on the river crossing. Now we're pretty guaranteed to have a safe defence. The enemy may still attack, but if they do, we can just set the battle going, walk away and come back later to a win. Now though, betrayal. The French, only just created as our own vassal, suddenly declare war on us, so they weren't very grateful for the fact that we liberated them from Japanese occupation, and now we're going to have to fight them. The upside is that we get to fight the French, which is what I wanted to do with this expedition anyway, and they do only have like 6 units and 1 territory, so it's not actually going to be a setback really. That said, they will be able to take this castle as their first move. As you can see, they only have 4 units of infantry and 3 generals. I think fought manually this battle would be perfectly winnable because the generals would just sit around outside and we would be able to take down those infantry units. I'm going to auto-resolve it though, just to be nice to the enemy and let them take the castle, because I'm pretty confident that we could just send a few units and be able to defeat them. We actually almost defeat their army with the auto-resolve also. At the end of that end-turn sequence, there is another rebellion. It just keeps happening. We're lucky here because they're attacking a castle that's really close to those Wakayama armies that are hanging around, but they didn't come in to reinforce the rebels, so that was good of them. I'm going to auto-resolve that, even though it's balanced, just because I don't want to have this fight in the series. We lost all of our garrison and a fair few regular units as well, so that's a shame, but the battle was won, and we'll send our main armies back to clear that out in a moment. It was just like you said it would be. How did you acquire such a power of prediction? Let's just say the baggers didn't come across firm as the Rock of Gibraltar, mate. I have no idea what that means. Good, good. Now then, one of us needs to go sort this out. It may be rude, but I feel I must insist that you let me handle this. Insist away. Got it in for the frogs, have you? Oh, there is plenty good about them, to be sure. But I rather need to prove myself in certain ways, and defeating the French in person would be enough of a boast to see me through hard times far and away. So you're gonna be all, I killed some Frenchies, please let me keep all the plantations I stole? What? How could you say such a thing? It's alright, don't get your drawers twisted over it. Everyone else is playing the same game, mate. Just slide me a box of the old Kyushu blend now and again, will you? Well, if I happen to come across some available for legitimate purchase, perhaps I will gift you some. That's the spirit. Now get out there and give them something to say ooh la la about. It's time to try and sort out the Wakayama, who are just sending stack after stack at us. They're spamming troops from their many castles down to the south. In this case, we've got a 3-on-2 battle where the balance isn't far enough in our favour to auto-resolve. So I took it down to the field, formed up in a big line to see what would happen, and put a double line on our left flank thanks to a hill. And that was good because the enemy cavalry mostly attacked on our left flank as the battle started, although I'm using the word attacked fairly broadly. You can see they didn't even run at us, they just walked into range and were gunned down. We really didn't have to do anything. This is live footage, I'm just not actually playing the game, just waiting for us to win as the enemy commits suicide against our line. Once the cavalry were done with that, the infantry came in for something that was largely the same. They did have a few ranged units that could shoot at us, but a lot of them were matchlock troops or archers who are going to have a bad time against our regular rifle infantry. And their melee units, as we see here, also weren't hugely enthusiastic about charging into battle. So yes, just a very ceremonial fight where lots of enemy troops came over here to die and didn't make many attempts otherwise. Their general decided to come in right at the end to just finish off the performance of the enemy army. and down they went. A couple of his guards might have reached our lines, but I don't think they achieved anything once there. So the field is quickly left absolutely covered in bodies. We didn't really have to do anything in that fight, and we got an outrageous kill-to-death ratio. Despite the balance bar only being a little bit in our favour, that went extremely well. It's probably because at this point in the campaign our troops are so veteran, and we have lots of technology upgrades as well, that our accuracy and reload speed is through the roof. So we're firing really quickly and accurately and just gunning down whole units, which is especially easy if they just walk at you. Now we're checking in with Charles. You can see that one of the castles I'd captured just for no reason in this area is under siege with 3 stacks on the way. So I sent Charles's army to try and reinforce our southern front here, leaving behind 1 unit to guard the eastern front, because if I have 1 unit here, that means I can use my naval support fire to support my vassal Vituyama in the event that they are attacked. And as we see, they are attacked right away. So we need to put this plan into action. Our 1 unit of rifle mercenaries will direct our naval fire to attempt to prevent that full stack from overwhelming our allies. The enemy start making the climb. They've even got ninjas in there who will do well once inside, but the shells begin to rain down. In this case, the enemy are crossing a river or a moat, which reduces the effectiveness of naval support fire because most of the shells that land in the water don't explode, so their area of effect is minimal, and many of the shells going off on the bank were slightly too late. The enemy have already passed into the river. So our first volley did some damage, not enough to prevent this attack from going through, and they will be able to capture those outer walls most likely. But we just have to wait and charge up another volley. This time we're going to fire it to the north of the castle, where a group was just coming over the wall. It's nice to fire at the enemy when they're at the wall, because destroying the wall kills enemies as well, because they go flying. You can see it happening to some of them there. You can also see some of our allies are charging into the area of effect. We almost certainly hit some allies with this bombardment. The area is very wide. However, I think it also had a decent effect on the enemy. Their formation has been scattered, and they probably took, I don't know, maybe 100 or so losses in casualties. Now the rifle mercenaries have finally arrived at the castle, having walked over it from the edge of the map, so they can take part in the fight a little bit. I managed to get a one-on-one going with some conscripted infantry, who I think we are better than. So hopefully we can duel and defeat that 1 unit so that we did contribute directly in some way, but the indirect contributions don't have to end either. As we actually successfully defend that corner of the castle, the other corner that was under attack that has more pressure being put on it is once again smashed with artillery fire, probably killing some enemies, probably killing some allies as well by the looks of things. But it did have the desired effect. The enemy army started to chain rout at about this point, and everything inside the castle retreated. That left just some scouts outside who were faced with a dilemma. My naval guns are destroying the bank in front of them. They can turn away and try to walk back, but the same thing is happening to the bank behind them. So they're in trouble, and they wisely just hang about in the river for a bit and actually don't take any damage from the naval fire. However, they did not take the castle either. The battle ended after a while. A victory, so the plan did work. I'm pretty sure it was just our allied troops putting in a good performance, but we'll take the credit for it anyway. Now an interesting little battle. We had a unit of volunteers that I was using to guard our French vassals and had forgotten about. So now the French are coming to attack them with 2 units. I thought I'd stand my ground and see if we could gun them down somehow in the battle. The enemy got close to us, but then waited outside of our range, not wishing to attack for some reason. And after some time and maneuvers, they just stayed here. The AI has just completely given up all of a sudden right at the start of the fight. And we can use that, of course, to our advantage.
Où est mon bibliothèque? J'ai mal aux dents. L'année dernière, je suis allé en France. Je suis resté au camping. J'ai voyagé en bateau. Tous les jours, j'ai nagé dans la piscine et je jouais au ping-pong. C'était super. Il porte un pantalon mauve. Où sont mes cheveux? Tous les avez-vous? Je ne les trouve pas. Je les ai partout. Tenez à gauche et continuez tout droit. Je voudrais être pilote parce que c'est bien payé. Je voudrais voyager. C'est intéressant et j'aime travailler en équipe. Comment dépenser tout ton argent? Je ne me sens pas bien. Je fais partie d'un club de cyclisme. Je voudrais devenir votre parce que j'aimerais travailler dans un grand magasin et j'aimerais vendre des vêtements. En riant.
Je regarde la télé.
La semaine dernière, j'ai passé 4 jours dans un village de vacances en Normandie. On est resté dans une petite maison, une pleine forêt.
J'adore le français. Oh! The first unit was routed and the second unit took some fire, then actually ran away out of our range, then decided to run back into range. I thought they may stop and fire at us, but that would have been okay since we would have won the gunfight by this point. However, it's going to go even better than that. They're just going to run at us. I think they're going for a melee charge here. Not the best idea. They take more losses and then rout, and will be killed even more as they try to escape now because they're too close. So we ended up with a grand total of 0 losses. Now that's a good ratio, and we've held our ground outside the French settlement. Now moving on to something a bit more difficult. That situation I wanted to relieve with Charles's army has now turned into a battle. We're being attacked by 3 and a bit armies with our 1 army inside, and it's mostly recruits who aren't very good, but still will have the castle and can try the usual strategy. The second army the enemy is attacking with is mostly ninjas, which means this composition could be quite effective at making a castle assault. There were a couple of factors that played into the enemy's favour in this battle that I'll quickly go over. One is an old-fashioned Fall of the Samurai glitch where your men can't fire. You can see it happening here. I'm doing the usual strategy where the enemy gets shot, in theory, as they run towards our men who are standing back from the wall, but they didn't shoot, so we got engaged in melee instead. And that's not really going to go in our favour. We're experiencing something similar over here. The usual solution to this is to turn fire at will off and on again. I was just confirming here that it is happening. For some reason, a couple of men in these units are firing. Most of them aren't, even though clear line of sight appears to be available, and usually they would shoot in that scenario. So I've just put the entire army on, off and then on again with fire at will, which sometimes resets their desire to shoot and causes them to fire at targets. And it sort of works. The unit next door starts firing at the guys right in front of them. Maybe that's going to do some damage. We're also now going to have the reverse glitch almost, where the enemy's melee troops get stuck and just stand there doing nothing, so we can fire at them. So maybe in the end things evened out. Then, to continue the glitch showcase, we had another glitch which usually only happens in sieges, where you can't move your units sometimes. They get stuck, often when they're positioned near walls. So this unit needs to fold around, but it can't, so they're just going to stand there. They'll do it eventually, usually a couple of minutes later they do follow through with the order, but they just stand there frozen until they do it. As for the actual fight, it's not looking too good. All of the enemy's melee units, especially their ninja, have just rushed in, got our guys into melee easily and are destroying them, and really the only hope here is that we are killing lots of them through the fact our men on the wall behind are shooting into the melees and just killing everything. And it does more damage than you think. We'll be inflicting hundreds of casualties on the enemy as they come in, but ultimately we don't stop them from getting into the inner part of the castle. I'm going to try the same strategy again, locking the enemy in place with something and then using something else to fire at them, but with not much space and with fewer and fewer units available, it's going to be difficult. The balance bar looks okay right now, by the way, but they do have a full stack in reserve that will join the battle, so there's going to be a long drawn-out struggle now where we just have to hope our men will do their job correctly and perhaps somehow defeat the enemy. Can you not ride your own horse? Where's the fun in that? It's faster. There's no time to waste here. They could be fighting right now. Charlie, you really do care about those Japanese, don't you? I care about protecting my men. You don't have to be coy about it. It's cute. I kind of see it too, you know. They're so polite all the time. Anyway, it's got me to thinking about some big ideas. I suppose I'll be hearing them. Uh-huh. You see, I haven't been entirely honest with you, Charlie. I was kind of looking for something, back when I was on the market, so to speak. I need to find a man with potential. Wait, you're leaving me? No, Charlie, I ain't leaving. Far from it. I'm saying that I've been sold and shipped on little old you. You're just what we're looking for. We? Oh, I mean, well, it's a hard thing to explain. You see, Japan needs a leader who can make things run real smooth, can be trusted to have his loyalties in the right place. Lots of British men are more loyal to the Empire than anything else. That's not the right place. Your scheming runs from the surface to the core of your being, Miss Cao-chan. What party do you represent, exactly? Not a party. It's a order? I don't know the words for it, really. We're trying to make the world a more peaceful place, a more godly place. You're the powers behind the throne. That's what you're talking about. That's right, here I am, soon to be the power behind the throne of Japan, the Alcock throne. Despite losing most of our army, we were able to hold off the first wave of enemy attacks, and then the second wave proved easier than expected to resist, since although we only had a few men, most of this second wave focused on trying to get through a gatehouse that the enemy had captured, and that provided a choke point where we could just rain shot on men as they came through the door, and triggered a convenient AI loop. Sometimes the AI, as it comes into the castle, if it takes extreme losses really quickly, it tries to go back outside again. So the enemy troops were in an endless loop of walking in and out of the doorway, and eventually half of the stack that came in was destroyed and the other half was defeated normally. That wasn't the end of the fight, because I had to send my troops outside of the castle to hunt down a load of units that were just sitting around here and there. This triggered their wooden cannons to start firing at us. They had been firing earlier, but I guess they saved some ammo for just this occasion, so got a few more kills. Once we were closer, the enemy started revealing some hidden troops. They had a load of those mounted bow ninjas who were coming out of the forests here, just charging right into us rather than engaging in a ranged battle. Probably the right choice, but we do have enough men there to defeat them. Some more appeared and we shot them this time, a little bit easier. And soon enough the enemy are in very bad condition and it looks like we're going to win. They've still got one last move though. Their general is able to charge onto our flank. I sort of had an echelon going so you can resist this a little bit. Gonna use a square, but that unit that gets charged will still get virtually annihilated by this charge. At least we can form up men right next to them to shoot into the melee, killing absolutely everything there, and that will persuade the enemy general to retreat. I would have thought we would have managed to rout the enemy earlier than this, but the army losses thing that makes the enemy rout once they've lost a certain proportion of their army, I think compares the losses of both armies. So the fact that we lost a lot of men causes the enemy to fight down to a much smaller number just in case they'll win in the end. In this case though, they didn't. It's a victory for us, but we've lost a lot of men. The only consolation for High Command is that most of this army was Japanese troops, so we haven't lost many British lives there, and we have held the position. Not that we needed to hold this position at all, we were just holding it earlier because we could. Now though, Charles will be able to come in and clear this situation all up. He can auto-resolve away a couple of the scraps and reinforce this southern road, and we'll leave him here to make this a more permanent front line. We also need to do some clearing up back over with his father John, and after auto-resolving a stack out of existence, we're finally getting to a point where there aren't just enemy armies all over our front line here. It's starting to look stable, and indeed we can actually advance from here if we want and take another castle, because it will sort of choke point the Wakayama's advance. There are some Kawana armies hanging around, including this one, which is already behind our front lines. But I'm going to ignore it. I'm not going to bother taking men off the front line to pursue them, because I just don't think they're going to do very much at this stage. The castles around here are good enough and have some troops and some defensive buildings as well, so that should all be fine. Now, to finish things off, we're going to have a quick battle over here with George. I'm pursuing this group of French commanders and a couple of infantry units that are half dead from the exploits of our volunteers earlier, so we can just charge in, making use of the fact that some local Odawara forces have the rest of the French in check to get a nice easy fight. And the French, perhaps seeing that they can't win, are going to try and go out the honourable way. Perhaps they just charge right into our line. First a general comes for a flank attack, some infantry and dragoons fire at them, and they basically all die. I think one guy reaches our line, there we go, and once he's here he realises that this probably isn't a good idea and tries to get out of there. However, the dragoons will just shoot at him as he goes, so he does not get away with it. Then a very similar thing happens with another general on our other flank, not even attacking simultaneously, just to make sure these attacks are as likely to fail as possible. So that leaves their commander, their faction leader, and these infantry units. The infantry are just being absolutely annihilated. This unit is cut down to the very last man, without even firing a shot. The legionnaires behind them I think did get a shot or two off, but they're also killed to the last man very quickly as well. And finally their commander, this Philip Bonaparte guy, decides to run for it, but his unit is annihilated as it withdraws. So there we have it, the French leadership in Japan has been annihilated, and although it was no grand battle, George can finally claim victory against the French. Perhaps the Japanese will finish them off by the looks of things, and that will all be sorted. That is it for now. Thank you very much for watching, and a special thanks as always to the OfficiallyDevin patrons. We'll finally go for our attacks on the various parts of Edo and start bringing this campaign to a close in the next part of Honourable Gentlemen.